evening and welcome to the 2021 Westfield Mayoral Candidates Forum, sponsored by the Westfield Leader. I'm Lauren Barr, owner and publisher of the Leader, and I will be serving as the moderator for tonight's event. Reporter Fred Rossi will be our timekeeper. Tonight's forum will follow the guidelines from the League of Women Voters, sticking to the issues with no personal attacks by either of the candidates. We ask tonight's limited audience to remain silent throughout the forum and to hold any applause until the end of the session. On Tuesday, November 2nd, voters in Westfield will elect ward representatives and the mayor. Tonight we have our two mayoral candidates, Democrat Shelley Brindle and Republican Joann Neylan. Each candidate will deliver a 4-minute opening statement. Questions will then alternate between the two candidates, with the candidate directly answering a question having up to 4 minutes to respond. The candidate rebutting will have up to 2 minutes to reply. At the end of the Q&A, each candidate will deliver a 4-minute closing statement. Fred will signal the candidates with a yellow card when they have 30 seconds left, and then again with the red card when the time has expired. Just reminding the candidates to keep their eyes on Fred so that they have a good idea of the time. The order has been determined by a coin flip, and so we will begin this evening with the opening statement from Joann Neylan.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren, for hosting this debate, and thank you to all who are viewing this. I am Joann Neylan, candidate for mayor of our beautiful town of Westfield. As you may know, I've served on town council for 16 years. I thought I was finished with public service, however, a few things drew me back, and here I am. The main reason, the overarching reason that I am running for mayor is because the level of vitriol that we are experiencing at the national level has made its way down to our town of Westfield, and that's just not acceptable. We no longer speak to each other as neighbors with respect for one another. Residents, good people I know, who I've known for a long time, are no longer comfortable to speak their minds or to participate in local government for fear of reprisal. We no longer have a true diversity of ideas. Also, you should know that since I began this journey, my message has been unlabel me and let's keep it local. At this level of government, it should not matter whether there's an R or a D in front of my name. I am running as Joann Neylan, a person who wants to keep our streets safe, keep our town financially secure, provide adequate sports fields for our children, and make sure your quality of life issues are met. We worked really hard to make Westfield the best community in New Jersey, and I'm not afraid to talk about tough issues. And the hard truth is Mayor Brindle is taking Westfield in the wrong direction. It is critical that we unite as one community and have civilized debates that will result in saving our downtown, preventing overdevelopment, and improving town services like parks and athletic fields. Westfield has been my hometown for 30 years when my husband Kevin and I moved from Brooklyn. Family means everything to us, and so our priority was to raise our children near our extended family. We looked in many places in New Jersey, but we found that Westfield was the nicest town. It had everything we wanted, just like many of the young families today. Having lived in Westfield for so long, I experienced a lot of major changes. We moved here when we had only one child. Soon we had 2 others. Now all of my 3 children are adults, and they had a great time growing up here. Raising our family in Westfield turned out to be one of the best decisions we could have made. So although I've been in public life for a while and in town for a long time, many of you probably do not know that I'm a first-generation American on my father's side. He was born in Italy. He came here with nothing. He passed away suddenly of a heart attack when I had just turned 13, which was a real tragedy for my family, and it profoundly affected us. But my mother was a very strong woman, and I was raised in a very loving and supportive environment. My mother, herself a first-generation American, was by all measures a modern woman, strong, independent, and self-reliant. Of all the people in my life, my mother was and is the most influential person. She led by example, and her can-do attitude has been my guiding light. I grew up believing that I could achieve anything if I worked hard enough. I come from very humble beginnings, but I could not be richer in what matters. It is because of my upbringing that I was able to achieve my goal of becoming an attorney, and being an assistant district attorney in Brooklyn was one of the greatest experiences in my life. Now working as a public defender in Mountainside is also extremely rewarding. I love being involved in public service, and I always have. So you know why I'm running for mayor. You know a bit about me and a little bit about from where I come from. I hope you read about my articles about my vision and my positions. After tonight, I hope I've earned your support, your respect, and your vote on November 2nd. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Brindle, your opening statement.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'd like to first congratulate Lauren Barr for being the first female owner and publisher of The Leader. Thank you for hosting, and thank you, Joann, for participating. It's not lost on me that there are 3 women on the dais tonight. We have come a long way in just 4 years. Tonight, I am looking forward to a healthy debate on the issues and contrasting our visions for the future and our records, which include my first term as your mayor and my opponent 16 years as my Ward 2 councilwoman and until recently chair of the Westfield Republican Committee. 4 years ago, I ran for mayor because I was tired of watching our downtown fall behind neighboring peer communities like Summit and Cranford. I introduced myself as a 23-year resident who had recently retired from HBO, where I was the first female executive in the C-suite. I led HBO's $4.5 billion domestic subscription business and many of their most important transformations, most notably bringing Game of Thrones to your iPhone. I aspired to use that experience of leading teams, managing large budgets, and driving innovation to bring a business mindset and renewed energy to town government, which appeared complacent, enabled by a governing body comfortable with the status quo. After taking the oath of office, I dedicated myself to being Westfield's first full-time volunteer mayor, to change what I discovered to be our biggest impediments to progress: an absence of long-term vision and strategic planning, and a penny-wise, pound-foolish approach, and an alarming lack of proper oversight, especially on personnel and financial matters. We delivered on these fronts during my first term, even though half of it required us to work through a pandemic. With the ongoing support of our community and the council, including a split council, which Joann was part of for my first 2 years, we have a record of accomplishments to share. We lowered both the tax rate and spending rate and stopped overtaxing residents by right-sizing a bloated surplus. We paved almost half the roads in town, more than any prior administration, half at no cost to taxpayers. We reduced crime by 34%. We fought for our commuters and a peak one-seat ride to New York City, drawing the support of state and federal officials, and I am never given up on that. We prioritized safeguarding the environment and preserving our history. And we professionalized and automated Town Hall while introducing long-term strategic plans for our towns and our parks. We delivered all of this and more with unflinching transparency, empathy, and facts, and we're emerging from the pandemic on exceptional financial footing with much to look forward to. Because we cultivated an inclusive and service-oriented culture, we engage hundreds of talented volunteers who keep stepping up to serve the community and bring our ideas to life, from Adams Fest, Rainbow Crosswalks, public art exhibits, and more. And since we opened up applications to everyone for the first time, with over 600 received, our boards and commissions now better reflect our community. One I'm most proud of is that 57% are now women. And we form new committees that support the previously underserved, like seniors. My opponent's stated campaign goal is to return things to how they were. I believe that's a mistake, just as it is a mistake to conflate healthy civic engagement and public input with divisiveness. I believe that now is not the time to bring small solutions to big problems, especially those exacerbated by the pandemic. When it comes to our downtown, Joann and I have very different visions. She has tried hers for over a decade, and it only puts us further behind our peers. My vision is one that we are just beginning to shape, one that is transformative and permanent and will rival what you see in some of the best walkable towns in the U.S. In just 3 years, we've demonstrated what we're capable of in Westfield. It's why I'm seeking a second term, so we can finish what we started. I'm looking forward to discussing our records tonight and contrasting our very different visions for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Now begin our question portion. I'd just like to remind the audience to please keep your comments to yourselves this evening. Our first question goes to Joann Neylan. Everyone seems to agree that there are more downtown store vacancies than they'd like to see. Without anchors like Lord & Taylor and the Rialto, what can the mayor and council do to attract new businesses to town?
Thank you, Lauren.
You have 4 minutes.
Okay. So downtown Westfield was once a premier destination, winning national awards when I was on the council. Today, it's losing business, customers, and frankly, its shine. Just this year, Westfield was voted the worst town in this country to start a new business. The failing health of our downtown is not a political issue. It's a sad reality. All you have to do is look around and see so many empty storefronts. To change this, we must create confidence in our downtown. Despite Mayor Brindle's promises to turn the downtown around, we are in a far worse shape than we were just 4 years ago. There are over 24 empty storefronts. We lost the beloved Rialto and Lord & Taylor. There are over 24 empty storefronts. Excuse me. It is true that there is just so much the town can do, but I say we can do a lot more to change the current culture, and that means, most of all, engaging the local businesses and property owners, giving them real input, listening to their ideas, and creating an environment where mutual needs can be met. Just 2 weeks ago, I met with business owners and property owners where we got the two groups together in one room. And as a result of that first one initial meeting, a mutually beneficial arrangement may come out of that. That's exactly what this town should be doing, supporting the local businesses, the local property owners, and business owners. Regardless of the specific outcome of this one situation, the point is I can bridge the gap in communication. And between putting the two most important groups that can turn our town around, there has not been a real dialogue between businesses and property owners. And as your mayor, I can and I will set the tone. I will not sit on the DWC. I would allow a free flow of ideas to actually occur. I think there's undue influence by the mayor on boards where free flow of ideas should be able to go on. I can change ordinances to encourage and promote the changing needs of our residents. It seems like many people will not be going back to work 5 days a week. Folks will need a place to conduct business in town. I say let's make it attractive and easy for them to meet with peers and clients. I would invest in town-wide Wi-Fi. I would make public spaces outdoors, more green spaces, such as the area next to the Rialto. That should be a place that has a grassy area with cafe tables that allows people to meet. I would change the ordinances like I did when I was on council to allow for professional offices in the ground floor. I allowed that on the north and south side, South Avenue corridors. I would continue with that in the central business district. When I was on council, I updated antiquated restrictions on liquor licenses and also amended land use ordinances to permit places like yestercades and microbreweries to do business. I would continue to streamline applications for new tenancies. There is so much you can do with a spirit of cooperation and true leadership with businesses that are dying to get here. I do not believe in a one-size-fits-all solution with one developer like Streetworks, who will profoundly change the nature and charm of our downtown. The answer is not a total reformation. We all moved here because we love the balance between downtown, the charm, and the walkability of it. We don't want another Jersey City. From all the people I've spoken to, that's not the vision that they have. That's not the vision that I have, which is reflective of all the people that I've spoken to.
Thank you. 2 minutes for your rebuttal.
Yep, thank you. First of all, I don't really recognize the downtown that Joann describes, with all respect. I don't know if any of you were at Quimby Street on Tuesdays this past summer, and it was just bumping, and it's been packed on Sunday nights. I do agree, our vacancies are too high, and I've said that from the day one. And I've also said that, and I do believe that this is not the time to bring small solutions to big problems. And we've done that. And I know there was a downtown task force that was implemented right before the last election. And you know what? We actually implemented a lot of those recommendations, from ordinance changes to parking lots. And guess what? We still have a vacancy problem. So some of the working around the edges solutions that Joann just proposed aren't going to fundamentally fix our structural problem. And that is the fact that we do not have enough foot traffic in our downtown in the absence of national retail stores that can support our businesses organically. And I know one of Joann's suggestions was to use the surplus to actually support small businesses to renovate their buildings, which, not only is there a lot of issues with that, and not to mention it's illegal, but those are the types of things that aren't the right way of thinking about this. So Streetworks is not just a developer. Streetworks is our largest property owner and taxpayer. They are the most vested in the success of our downtown. Their success is our success. So we are incredibly fortunate that we actually have our largest vested stakeholder interested in working collectively with us to create solutions. And these are these structural issues. We need people living, working, and playing in our downtown in order to support them organically. 501 South Avenue is an example of what just happened on the south side. You know what? Those 30 apartment buildings are now supporting the brand new Lions Roar Brewery, an ordinance which we enacted, by the way, Victoria's Cake, Splash flash of Tide and everything else that Victoria's take as a new business. Come to business in the last 3 months, 4 years, Warby Parker, Bear Burger, Atlantic Health, J. McLaughlin, Lions Roar, Fair&Olio, and I could go on and on. Those are businesses that came here, 60 businesses in our downtown in the last 4 years, in spite of a global pandemic. So I think we're on a really good track, and I'm incredibly proud of what we've done in our downtown in the last 4 years.
Thank you. The next question goes to you. With a new round of affordable housing requirements set to be released in 2025, the next mayor will bear the burden of that. What is your vision for how the town can strike a balance between smart development and overdevelopment while still meeting these new affordable housing obligations?
And that's a great question, and it's one I know that affordable housing is really complicated, and I have said I've given my hats off to the previous administration for the affordable housing agreement that they came up with in 2017, and which my administration has inherited. I do think in light of that we did the best we could, and certainly compared to other towns, and I think we're a proud COA town, and I think that's something that we should be very proud of. We've already met 139 of the units that were proposed. I think we have a 62 obligation and now another 100. I think what we need to do is take more control over our development. And what we've done is we've done kind of the spot development without being able to assess the surrounding infrastructure and traffic implications for each of those. I know I talk about 333 Central a lot, but I think 333 Central is an example of a missed opportunity for the town. It was one of our first affordable housing units in a prime location, and we didn't assert any type of redevelopment agreement or constraints that would have actually, I think, done better financially for the town and actually required them to provide better public benefits. And not only that, we would have opportunities to implement, I don't think it actually is a representative of a beautiful gateway to Westfield, and if we had done a proper redevelopment agreement with them, we could have enforced a lot of the structural and aesthetic requirements that I think I could have made it better. So to the point, back to your question, Lauren, about what would we do in the future, I think we need to assert more control over that development. As I mentioned, I think in hindsight, probably it would have been better if some of those affordable housing settlements were downtown, because that's where we need the foot traffic to support our businesses. But at the time, some of them, like Williams Nursery, that people keep attributing to something I'm developing, Williams Nursery has been in the affordable housing settlement since the 1990s. And basically then it was increased in density under Joann's administration just a couple years ago. So we are now just inheriting that obligation and trying to see what we can do to make it work in the best possible way for the community. You do that through redevelopment agreements, which we've done with 501 with Westfield Crossing, and we anticipate, and not all redevelopment agreements have pilots, by the way, and I'm sure that'll be another question. But redevelopment agreements enable you to assert control over development so we can require obligations and mandate what those projects should be that are in the best interest of our community. And that's what I anticipate doing in the next round. And it is a really tricky balance between what works for us and what not. And by the way, one other comment about affordable housing. Everybody worries about apartments and kids. We have built 151 units to date. In those 150 units, there are 5 kids, 5 school-age children. That's it. And in 501 South Avenue that we just built, 30 units, 18 of them are 3 bedrooms. Everybody's worried 3 bedrooms bring all these kids. You know how many school-age kids are in there? 0. And it was leased from day one. So this notion and this scary notion that affordable housing brings kids is simply not true, in spite of what a lot of people will paint as this crazy density argument that's going to increase traffic in schools. So, I'm very proud, I think, of what we're trying to do to create better outcomes for the community out of the affordable housing agreements, and that's certainly what we intend to do as we approach 2025.
Thank you. You have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mayor, for recognizing the work we did on affordable housing, because I am very proud. I stand proudly with that plan that was approved by the court in 2017. We were very careful to craft a plan that did not burden or fundamentally change Westfield. You know, because of the plan that we worked very hard to craft, we had 80 affordable units around, as opposed to what was proposed of 1,600, which would have drastically changed the nature of Westfield. So what the thing is, we want to maintain a balance. We don't want to fundamentally change Westfield. I'm afraid that the steps that have been taken by Mayor Brindle and her administration during the pandemic, while we were in lockdown, will fundamentally change going forward, because Designating areas as in need of redevelopment was never part of the affordable housing plan. What that does is give developers the right to develop here with a 30-year tax abatement, and it makes them eligible for a pilot program. Pilot is a payment in lieu of taxes. So South Avenue in Windsor, known as the Westfield Crossing, for example, has been designated as an area in need of redevelopment. And Mayor Brindle and her administration also voted to designate 3 municipal lots, that's town property, as areas in need of redevelopment. They are all now eligible, so is the Rialto and Lord & Taylor, for these pilot programs. What this does, it shrinks the tax base, and it means that you and I make up the difference. Developers' payments are based on projected profits. They're not guaranteed, and they can realize a lot less than they expect. The development at Westfield Crossing, it's important to know, not only were they granted a 30-year tax abatement, they expanded the one lot, 41 units that I approved when I was on council as part of the plan to now 5.5 acres and 193 residential units. I don't understand that. Lord & Taylor has also been given the rights to develop the north side and the south side train station.
Your time has expired. The next question goes to you. With many still recovering from Hurricane Ida, Irene and Sandy are not even a distant memory. These storms left flooding, power outages, and destruction in their wakes. What can town leadership do to both better prepare for handling the natural disasters and for their recovery?
Thank you, Lauren. Well, Westfield is a mature town, and we have to be smart. It ties into the conversation we were just having about how we develop. We have an infrastructure that needs updating, and I implemented many upgrades to our fields, parks, town buildings, you have to keep the department staffed well, and you have to maintain the buildings. Unfortunately, over the last 4 years, our physical condition has declined. For example, and this ties into the overdevelopment of the 193 units going to be developed at Westfield Crossing, and it's already been approved, is traffic on our overburdened streets and roads. Try going down Central Avenue. It's a parking lot. I don't know how that we're going to survive with that much more traffic on our infrastructure. Add to the equation all of these different changes that are going on around. Can you imagine all of this, how it's going to burden the area near Williams Nursery? We did not approve that number. These numbers have all been increased. This is not the smart growth that I helped craft when I was on council. It also bears noting that this pilot program has been gives the builder a greater, denser development. They got this sweetheart deal with a tax abatement. I just don't understand. It's not in the best interest of Westfield. The town entered into a no-bid agreement with Streetworks to develop Lord & Taylor and the 3 municipal lots. We have not heard yet why the 3 municipal lots have been included and how our infrastructure will be impacted. In the area of athletic fields, despite the promises to the contrary, we do not have one new field. Instead, money was wasted on consultants and studies. At the same time, our existing fields were not maintained at all, rendering them unsafe. Our downtown has more empty storefronts. We heard that we've attracted 50 new stores. What you did not hear was that 50 stores have closed since the beginning of 2018. As I walked through downtown this week, there are at least 20 to 25 empty storefronts, not including those that have been leased but not yet opened. Quimby Street, I have been to Quimby Street, and I don't recognize it. To me, it could be a gorgeous outdoor plaza. I love Spain. My son-in-law is from Spain. I love Italy, the outdoor alfresco dining. What we're experiencing downtown is not that. There should be a comprehensive plan and make it uniform that people want to go and sit down. Right now, it seems like a hodgepodge of mixture of businesses, and I've spoken to the business owners down there. Some of them are hurting, and they're hurting very badly. I don't think you can do that. You can't do one thing at the expense of other downtown businesses. Much needs to be done to get back on track. Mayor Brindle had 4 years. She ran on changing and fixing our downtown. It's quite the opposite. And our infrastructure, I will make fields for our infrastructure a top priority. I have a wealth of ideas from so many unhappy parents who are willing to help me and take immediate action. As for our downtown, I will continue the businesses with the stakeholders who live and work here. Our business owners and our property owners, they're eager to get to work, roll up our sleeves, and really turn this downtown around. And as far as lasting infrastructures, as for our roads, I will not allow the overdevelopment that will clearly destroy what roads we have.
2 minutes?
Well, I will try to address the infrastructure question that you asked regarding Ida and what happened after that. Completely agree. I don't think anybody anticipated what happened after Ida. Very, very proud of how the town responded to that, both our DPW in terms of all the debris pickup, and certainly the fact our advocacy for FEMA declaration was great. Again, another issue where we have put small solutions to big problems. And infrastructure has been a big problem for a long time. And we have been tackling it on a one-off basis. And we've decided it is finally time to take a very holistic, strategic look at our overall infrastructure, which is why we just announced at the council meeting on Tuesday night the 8 residents that are going to be on the Westfield Infrastructure Resiliency Committee that we just supported. And as of redevelopment and all these concerns about infrastructure, our downtown parking lots are the worst. They have never been constructed with infrastructure and stormwater management in mind. Redevelopment in town enables us to actually revisit a lot of the really old, aging infrastructure that we found when a water pipe burst last year during the holidays. So this is an opportunity for us to actually revisit and partner with our largest property owner, who's also vested in it, to invest in infrastructure for our downtown. That is the way you support businesses. And just one side, one of the very first things I did as mayor was set up quarterly meetings with property owners and business owners. I actually am attending a merchant town hall on Thursday. I'm sorry that's the first time you've done that, Joann, but it has been a constant of my administration since day one. I have those business owners and businesses on speed dial. I talk to them regularly about vacancies. I send them tenants regularly. So I have to say, this notion that this is going to be, it was new. I remember when I started, they said, we've never met with the mayor before. So actually, I'm mind blown, actually, that would be something that you would consider that had never been done before. But going back to infrastructure. Got it, thank you.
But the next question goes to you.
Terrific.
More turf, more grass, lights, drainage. What is the most cost-effective and environmentally friendly way for the town to both expand our field inventory and improve the existing fields?
Well, that's a great question. I'm so surprised you asked it. Obviously, this field shortage has been a problem for decades. I have been back in the rec department looking through plans from the 1990s when they were proposing fields in what is now the Conservation Center. So it is not new. And when I was elected, I was very committed to solving problems. And it was far past time to solve this particular problem. Our fields, as we all acknowledge and agree on, are a mess. The kids playing football in Tamaqua Field and others, it's dangerous. It's dangerous. It's like playing on concrete. And it is time to really take some very tough stands. But let's talk about process for a minute. Because when I walked into office, literally the week after I was sworn in, I was handed a plan at Tamaqua. And one I'd never seen before. And it was a turf field with lights with a big fence around it in Tamaqua, with a huge 100-foot baseball catch behind it, because you had to have it, because if you didn't, you couldn't play tennis and baseball at the same time. So my immediate question was, well, how was this plan arrived at? Can I see what else was considered? Well, nothing else was really considered. Can I see were Board of Fields considered? No. Can I see the RFP that was done to determine the best contract? Well, there wasn't an RFP. It was actually done with what they call a non-fair and open process. $80,000 spent on a contractor that was not even gone out to bid. And so who did they speak to? Well, they spoke to the stakeholders, the leagues. Did they speak to the public? No. Did they consider maybe moving it over in another area of Tamaqua? No. And so I find it interesting that this whole thing about turf and grass, and I'll just read in Joann's own words when she wrote from the Westfield Republican Committee's chair report in March of 2020. Given the heavy usage, a turf field with lights was critical to providing all young athletes with the necessary extended playing time and playing season. So obviously there's some agreement that turf is required to solve the capacity problem, and lights. And not to mention, she had said we'd already met with everybody, and we anticipate that this is going to be approved by the mayor and council in 3 months. The only people they didn't meet with was the public, not one neighbor. And I've spoken to them. And so I was criticized for canceling Tamaqua, but how on earth? We've seen how people feel about this. I was expected to get out front and defend a proposal that from the private sector where I come from never would have had passed muster in how they arrived at that conclusion. So I decided, as I've always done, take a step back, a long-term strategic approach, and consider everything from an objective source that we went out to bid for, right? In an open and fair process, as everything should be and everything has been done in my administration. And we did that. And we had a preeminent recreation firm that came and assessed everything and included Board of Ed fields. And not only, and that's how you came up with the Tamaqua plan and many others. And whoa, there goes my water. And it's not just fields. It's everything. It's improvements to Brightwood. It's improvements to Tamaqua. It's everywhere. So that's the way you go about it. And listen, this isn't an easy problem to solve. You wouldn't be seeing this at Edison if we thought it was. But I do believe every solution, every problem has a solution, if we can come together and figure it out. And what we're seeing on Edison was fully anticipated. We know it, because if it wasn't hard, it would have been done already. So yeah, the idea is if you can expand capacity with turf, then you can actually have opportunity to rest some fields, and then you can put in real grass. And of course, we'd love to have big grass lighted fields all over the place. That would be ideal. But as Joann herself said, we're in a highly developed and built town. We are. There's not an easy solution anywhere else. It would have been done already. So we're really, really trying really hard to come up with something that works for everybody, that meets the needs, and it limits the danger of these kids playing on these horrible fields, manage the environment and infrastructure, and I'm committed to doing that.
You have 2 minutes.
Let me state at the outset, I do not approve of the Edison Field project because I know that's what's on everybody's mind. Not even the newest iteration, $18.2 million or $9 million. I do not approve of the mega plan itself with all of the problems that are around it, and I do not especially approve of the process, which lacked sufficient notice to the surrounding residents. It lacked input, and it lacked transparency. And I'm glad Mayor Brindle brought up Tamaqua, because I was going to bring that up. Tamaqua, Brightwood, Gumpert. These are examples where there was no transparency. I've spoken to people, I was at the meeting for the Edison Field. The first they heard of it was in June when it came to the council. 2:55 p.m., the town council got a letter of intent for them to look at. They were gonna vote on that night about an $18.2 million field project. That's unacceptable. That's not transparency, the opposite. I remember standing outside of Gumpert Field in Ward 2 in the pouring rain, one meeting before those residents. In the pouring rain, that was the only time in 3 weeks Gumpert Field, the ice skating rink, was put down. In Brightwood Park, I've been told by residents that they were outside their back door and they saw people walking in Brightwood Park with equipment, and they rallied right away. I've spoken to these people because they were going to change Brightwood Park, one of the only nature preserves we have in New Jersey, and they were going to put mountain bike trails and do other improvements. I don't consider them improvements, and I pledge to keep Brightwood Park a natural preserve. So we have quite the opposite. And RFP, what about Streetworks? 3 no-bid contracts to develop the majority of downtown. I don't see that as transparency. It's quite the opposite.
Next question goes to you. Westfield, like many of its surrounding communities, has been among the string of car burglaries and thefts. In 2018, police departments across the country started the 9 p.m. routine campaign on social media to remind people to lock their cars nationwide. Is this issue solved by public education, a larger police presence, or something else?
Thank you. You know, I'm a former prosecutor, and keeping people safe and holding bad guys accountable is paramount to me. Now, even as a public defender, I counsel people that I represent to follow the law and respect the law and learn from your bad decisions. My point is that people need to be held accountable for their bad acts, and actions have consequences. The prevailing sentiment around Westfield these days is that we just don't feel safe and secure in our homes and our belongings. I've spoken with many young families whose homes were attempted to be broken into, and in one case, broken into. In one case, the criminals were thwarted only because the homeowner with his 12-year-old son was at the back door locking it, and on the other side of that door were criminals. all the way down. It's a far driveway. In another instance, a couple just moved here, and their kitchen window was broken into, and they stole the keys that were on the wall. How the criminals knew that keys were there, I don't know, but it's creepy to think that people are casing our homes and walking around our neighborhood, going up and down our property, checking the doors to see if they're unlocked or not unlocked. I was in my own yard one night till 12:30 with friends. The next morning, the cops were at my back door wanting to know if I heard anything, because I live on a cul-de-sac, on a mudroom door, somebody entered, took the keys, the pocketbook, and the car that was in the driveway. This is just unacceptable. 11:11 p.m., AT&T downtown was broken into. People could have still been walking around. It was the summertime. And Chief Badaloro actually confirmed at one of the neighborhood meetings that I was at that criminals are watching our behavior. They're watching our patterns of behavior. I want to make sure that criminals know that Westfield is not open for business. This town should welcome everyone, except those who want to do us harm. And as the mayor, you can set the tone. I was asked, Joann, so what can a mayor really do? Well, I'll tell you, it's not rocket science. All you have to do is deter criminals. They don't want to get caught. These are low-level people that they don't want any trouble. They want to stay out of towns. So if you have deterrent, if you redirect the police forces that we have, and you let them go around and drive around the areas, there aren't too many entrances and exits to Westfield, they'll stay out and you'll see crime go down. And if you tell me statistics prove that crime is down, well, then you're just not listening and you're out of touch, because everyone I've spoken to has said that it just doesn't feel safe anymore. And I have to tell you, that's something I take very, very seriously. As a mayor, that's one of the most important things you can do, is keep your residents safe. I stand proudly with our police department. I will give them all the resources they need to fight crime in this town. And if that means increasing the number of police officers, well, I'm prepared to do that. That's how we should spend our money. That's what we should invest in, that kind of stuff that protects our town and our residents.
2 minutes.
Gosh, I'm just so surprised by Joann's change of heart, because under her watch, the police department was both cut in terms of budget and staff. And let me tell you what I found when I came here, when I was sworn in. I found a demoralized police force led by a morally corrupt police chief. We discovered in the first 6 months $1 million slush fund that was held in the police department where they were using to buy surplus military equipment, while Joann was the chair of the finance committee. We immediately restored full funding and staffing. We hired a police chief, born and bred, Chief Halloran from Westfield, who is committed to community policing. I believe, when you have to redirect and tell them how to do their job, then you need a new police chief. Because what you should be doing is finding someone that you trust, that shares values, and all I needed to do was say we need to reduce crime and make our community feel safe. And you say stats don't matter? I'm all about facts, and facts don't lie. That's all I know. And actually, as I said, total crime has been down 34%. And if I look at even the prior 4 years in Joann's administration, it was even worse. And that was when you had cut the budget and staffing. So I also had to be very proud of our police department. They attained state professional accreditation for the first time in town history. They're only one of 4% of departments in the country that have achieved this level of professionalism. So we don't need to tell them how to do their jobs. We do need to make sure that they are fully supported with staff and resources, which they have been. And the other thing, you think you hear about crime, you know why you're hearing about crime for the first time? Because we want them to enlist their help. And I laugh about transparency. Do you know why this is being live streamed tonight? Because it was one of the first things we initiated was the live stream. Because before you had to come to a council meeting to find out what was happening. And we certainly weren't telling anybody about crime, what was happening. But now we are telling everybody about it to list your support to fight it. And that's the way you do reduce crime. You do not tell your trusted police officers how to do their jobs.
All right, we'll move on to taxes. While operating in a 2% cap, other towns with similar or even lower taxes than Westfield are able to provide more services like regular bulky pickup, garbage service, curbside recycling of more than plastics 1 and 2 and regular paper, grass and branch pickup. Aren't all the things that Westfielders either have to pay a private delivery service for or haul away themselves to the conservation center just a hidden tax? And what can be done to get residents more for their money?
Thank you for that question, and I agree with you. It's annoying. And I have to say all the emails I get from people always start with, for the taxes I pay. That always follows. I've lived here for so long. Those are the two things that always start an email to me. And I agree. I mean, I'm a 27-year resident. I pay these taxes too. Yeah, but I'll tell you one of the biggest problems we have. 92% of Westfield's taxes are on the back of our residents. We're the highest in Union County. Everybody else has other commercial tax base. So, you know, Summit has Overlook Hospital and Celgene. Everybody's got a diversified tax base but us. So any time that we want something significant, the only way it gets paid for is on our backs. And so until we figure out how to expand and diversify our tax base, there isn't anything that's fundamentally going to change that. Considering the town is only 16% of the dollars you pay or we collect, you're just having to chip around the margins to be able to really make something substantial. So for us, it is about expanding and diversifying our tax base. And you know what? That is tied to our redevelopment downtown. It's one of our key objectives. You know who the largest property owner is downtown? The town of Westfield. And you know how much money we're getting from those? Zero. And that doesn't mean we develop them all into everything, but come on, there's got to be an efficient way to do that. If you want more, you have to understand there's a balance there, and that's what we got to figure out. But on the record of taxes, though, I'm pretty happy about where we netted out. Another thing that we found out, I know everybody likes to talk about the surplus, right? But what I see is the surplus is a great political talking point without actually any real merit to it. So the one way you can also help services, you can make sure our government is run efficiently. So yes, they'll brag about a $14 million surplus, but you know what? You come in and we find out that $14 million surplus, which was an overtax on you, was actually sitting in a bank earning 0.75% interest. So one of the first things that Councilwoman Hapgood did as finance chair, she called the banks. And guess what? With 2 phone calls, raised it up to 1.5, put $300,000 in our pocket right away. The other thing you do is you don't let your police department have $1 million slush fund and buy military equipment, which has now been all slashed and taken away, scrapped, or sold, right? So you have to pay attention to the small things. And I think the big political talking point, which is very popular, is this surplus. But really, who's minding the store? And I think with only 16% of the taxes we collect, every dollar matters. And I think that's what we need to do, is not only focus on what we're doing more efficiently, investing in automation. You know why? Because if we're automated, we need less people to actually do it. You saw it with C-Click Fix. Another thing, penny wise, pound foolish, has been, we invested in equipment, accelerated the equipment purchase. A lot of people have said our snow plowing is better. You know why? Because we accelerated our snow plowing and other DPW purchases 3 years ago. You're seeing the beneficiary of that now. So there's been a lot of penny wise, pound foolish. I came in, we were on a GoDaddy email platform. That's just a reflective of how inefficient things were run. So even with the new website we introduced, it also comes a lot of automation. So first things first, we got to make sure that we're managing our own store, right? Then we got to make sure we keep taxes low, and we have. We have the lowest tax rate in decades, 1.1%. That's lower than rate of inflation and half of what the other folks did. Right? We have our spending went from 3.75% to 0.75%. So we have been doing our job and managing our investments and our spending very, very efficiently. And we gave your tax dollars back to you. And guess what? We just refinanced our debt at 0.21% interest, lowest in history because of our sound financial footing post-pandemic. So I'm sure you're going to hear we blew the surplus. You know what we did? We gave it all back to you. We invested in equipment and everything else, and we still ended up with a AAA bond rating, right? And we had the biggest rainy day fund ever in a pandemic, and we were fine.
Expired.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Well, for as inefficient as we were, we managed to keep your taxes well underneath the 2% cap, which it's a joke because there's a state cap. There's not much wiggle room. So this talk about lowest tax increase, it's kind of silly. We were on a downward trend with our taxes anyway. But we managed to give you all the services that you expected in this town, keep you safe, and save money. So we went from, I know what it's like to be on council when we went through a global financial crisis, and there were Superstorm Sandy and Hurricane Irene. We had reduced state aid, but yet, so we had over $200,000 in surplus in 2012. Through smart financial planning, we were able to get it up to 14.5 in 2017. And it's critical. We never laid anyone off. In fact, we did increase the police and fire department 3 years in a row for the police department and 2 years for the fire department. All this went on while we managed to save, and a lot has been said about the surplus, I agree. There's been a misrepresentation that we were hoarding taxpayer money. Nothing could be further from the truth. Remember, there's very little wiggle room. It's 2% tax cap. So what are you saving? I don't understand what they think. You're 44% of what? It doesn't show in anyone's wallet. Obviously, though, the surplus has come in very handy because the current administration spent $9 million of the surplus in less than 4 years. And where is it? I don't see one new field. I don't see one new tangible improvement in this town. $9 million in surplus within 4 years. That is unsustainable. Something's got to give. If you keep spending like this and you keep spending down the surplus, guess what? You're going to your taxes are going to, I don't know if they're not going to go up over 2%. I don't know where all this money is going to come from. They're going to have to go out and borrow, and the financial security of Westfield will be gone. All that we worked hard for to maintain, and that's why we have a AAA rating, because of the sound financial planning that we did for many, many years.
Westfield changed its historic preservation laws last year. The new law changed both the process for historic homeowners and put additional steps in place for those who want to knock down potentially historic buildings. Do you think these new regulations are good or bad for the town, and why?
So like most important things in life that require a choice, I try to find a balance. And achieving that balance is not always easy, especially when the stakes are high. So I've given a lot of thought to the historic preservation and private property rights. My husband Kevin and I live in this beautiful neighborhood of Witchwood. We chose Witchwood because we like the curved roads, no sidewalks, and the general feeling we got. I 100% respect the historic charm of Westfield. And our home is our biggest investment, and I'm sure like many of you sitting here tonight. And like many of you, you'd like to preserve the charm in your neighborhood. Yet maintaining the charm and the character of Westfield, must be balanced against private property rights. I am against the draconian steps taken recently by this mayor and town council to take the final choice of whether or not your house is designated as historic, with all the limitations that come with that designation, out of the hands of the homeowner, and gives the final say to a board chosen by the mayor and then ultimately the mayor and the town council. That is just plain wrong, and it's overreach. In fact, this huge overreach isn't even working as intended, because homes are being built right now that are out of character with the neighborhoods that they are being built in. I would change the land use ordinance, height, width, lot coverage, those things that have real teeth and real meaning and could absolutely positively change how these houses have to conform. I would enact those serious measures. It sounds nice that this council and mayor say they don't have any intention, I heard that last week, to go against a homeowner's wishes, but that really is irrelevant. This ordinance gives the municipal government the power to override a homeowner's decision. End of story. So it's either naive or disingenuous for the Mayor Brindle and her council members to claim that a homeowner's decision will always prevail. They don't know that. I believe private property rights are fundamental, and homeowners should not be subjected to the arbitrary hand of government. I believe we must respect homeowners and that we can achieve a better balance of maintaining Westfield's charm and historic field with logical, measured ordinance changes, with the input from many talented architects we have right here in our own town.
2 minutes.
Thank you. I'm actually incredibly proud of that historic preservation ordinance, and I actually believe it's going to be one of my strongest legacies. And let me tell you why we did it. One thing, we wanted to restore the proud heritage of historic preservation in Westfield that existed decades ago, right? We also we were not in compliance with municipal land use law to become a certified local government, which gives us access to grants to further support historic preservation. And it really is about creating a culture of preservation in the community. And what has happened in the last 3 years, we've had 7 voluntary designations for people that come and said they want to designate their homes. You know why? Because this administration has made a statement that we value it. Why are they going to do it if it's not something that the town treasures, right? And so of those 7, do you know that the town didn't even designate their own historically owned properties? The Reeve House wasn't even designated. So you say you value preservation, but yet you wanted to make the takes, didn't take the steps to actually do it on our own property. And I have to say, I do think, like, you know, you say you want, I think you guys call it homeowner autonomy or something, but we say that we want to preserve homeowner rights. What do we say when the developer wants to come and tear down Arcanum Hall, right? There's nothing that'll stop them from doing that until this administration enacted that ordinance. So you say you want property rights until you don't. And I do find it a little ironic that I think one of the council candidates, might have been Denise Garrett, is talking about all the things that could be done on the Lord and Taylor property. Let's make it a field. They want to tell our private commercial property owners what they should be doing with their own property, but yet have issues with preserving our historic treasures. So I just think that there's a misunderstanding about what this does and how it's enacted. And I have to say, I think I'm very proud of where we're going. We've already got people who have raised their hand about future designations. And I tell you what, I think it would be criminal if we actually reverse this ordinance. And by the way, there's been no detriment to any home up to date. Nothing has happened since this ordinance was enacted except good things.
So no surprise, there's a question about pilots.
Yes.
Westfield has entered into its first redevelopment pilot agreement with a commercial developer for the South Avenue project.
Yep.
With potential development proposals, coming on North Avenue and at Williams Nursery, do you think the pilots are a good or a bad way to control all the development in town?
Not all development. And I'd say, and there's a misrepresentation that any redevelopment agreement means there's going to be a pilot, and that is absolutely not the truth. I'll give you the Rialto for an example. We actually declared the Rialto an area in need of redevelopment because it protected and gave control over the town, that nothing could be done on that property without permission and an agreement from the town. Our biggest fear is the developer was going to come and want to knock it down and put up apartments. And so the redevelopment agreement enabled us to do that. There's no intention to put a pilot, but it does give us some control over what can happen there. And again, what I said earlier, I think it's incredibly unfortunate when you can't see beyond the political talking points to really agree what's in the best interest of the community. And this pilot with Westfield Crossing is an example, and this is something actually Joann should know. So we had 32 affordable housing units at Westfield Crossing, which was a significant, went a long way towards satisfying our obligation. By having a redevelopment agreement and ultimately a pilot, we are able to reduce the 24 3-bedroom units that were originally going to be market rate that were planned for that, which we all worried 3-bedroom might bring children. We ended up getting a much better quality project in terms of quality of architecture and aesthetics. And we also got $750,000 in public improvements. They're actually creating a new park across the street and deeding it over the town. And they're making another $350,000 contribution to the Park Improvement Fund. And by the way, in spite of what they'll tell you, it has zero impact on school budget. And don't ask me, ask the school administration who we spoke to before we did it. Zero impact, and they know that. But it's a great political talking point that we're actually destroying the schools. And as I said earlier, over the 151 apartments that have been built to date, there's only 5 school kids. And I also think it's important to note, school enrollment is down. Do you know that there's 400 kids less today, this year, than there were in 2015? Yes, there's 500 kids less than there were in 2018. And this isn't just pandemic related. It started in 2018. This year we lost another 109. That's 500 kids. That's an entire elementary school. So and this is a trend that's happening nationally. And so these apartments do not bring kids. And what I believe is that pilots actually make sense in the right place. And in this case, this is a place that is incredible. It's an eastern gateway to town. And one other very important thing, it was concluded by our professionals that this project could not be built with current tax rates. It couldn't be built. It wasn't feasible. The only way it was feasible is done with a pilot. And by the way, we have a legal obligation that if you actually don't make an affordable housing project financially feasible, that we could be sued. We have an obligation to make sure that these affordable housing things that we've agreed to and negotiated can happen. And in this case, it was deemed that a pilot was necessary to bring it to fruition. So I think it's a $52 million project that's going to absolutely increase the value of that entire neighborhood. It's going to be a beautiful gateway to Westfield. We've got major public improvements, and it's a $15 million net revenue benefit to the town. But to your question, no, pilots don't make sense everywhere at all. It all depends on where it is, what the impact is, and what public improvements we need. I don't foresee Williams Nursery being a pilot at all. And so I think it kind of comes down to, does the financial feasibility make sense? Can we make it happen? And what is our obligation to bring these projects to fruition? And what can we do to control the outcome of those things to make sure that we provide the best impact to the community? And I'm very, very proud of that Westfield crossing. And believe me, I knew it was going to be a political talking point, but as I've always done, I don't use the politics to make the best decisions for the town. And this was another example of that, and I'm very proud of it, and I think we all will be.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Yes, thanks. I will not approve a pilot program for developers, period. Pilots open the door for corruption, sweetheart deals for developers, and campaign contributions for elected officials. They are not in the best interest of Westfield. Pilots have been around for a long time. They were made for cities like New Brunswick, Jersey City, back in the 1960s when you couldn't attract businesses to do business down there. Westfield is absolutely not the type of town, it's not a city, town that pilots were intended for. Pilots are nothing more than gimmicks for developers. The only justification for a town like Westfield to offer a pilot is to get an influx of cash that they don't have to share. And Mayor Brindle is absolutely right. 95% of the fee that's negotiated based on projected profits that may not be realized goes right to the town. Schools don't get any, the county gets 5%. And the schools will get their money, she's right. But guess what? Who's making up that difference? You and me, the taxpayer, not the developer. Because when you take him out of the equation and the schools are guaranteed their money, who's left? We are. So it's disingenuous to say that it doesn't matter. It falls back on our backs. And if the Rialto, just for a second, why did not designate that as historic? Why make it a pilot? I don't understand. And Westfield Crossing to go from 41 units to 193, how that benefits Westfield, I don't know. That was not part of the smart planning that we were involved in. You approved that, I never approved that.
So back to the topic of surpluses. Joann, there's been a lot of discussion about the spending of town surplus money. Surplus is made up from leftover money from reserve for uncollected taxes, because we're very lucky to have an incredibly high collection rate in town, and from sale of town property and other leftover monies. How much surplus should the town keep on hand at all times? How much is too much? How much is too little? And if surplus monies are to be spent, how should the town be spending them?
Thank you. So there is no magic number. I know that Mayor Brindle said that she would be comfortable with $8 or $9 million as a surplus. We're down to $5.8 million in less than 4 years. That's unsustainable. When budgeting, I don't spend what I don't have, and I don't rely on what I might get for planning the future. Mayor Brindle's own words were that it's no surprise that the pilots will become due when the fields are going to be, the fields are going to come due. The fields are going to be, start to be enacted. It doesn't make sense that you should rely on future income to plan for the future of our town. When I was on council, we experienced a global financial crisis. We experienced reduced state aid, declining property values and tax revenue, damages that were caused, as I mentioned earlier, by Hurricane Irene and the Superstorm Sandy. We were operating with $200,000 in surplus. We had a town to run, and I helped craft a very tight budget that did not compromise the safety of our residents, all while staying under the 2% state cap. That's not impressive. The impressive thing is that through the smart fiscal planning, we were able to rebuild the surplus to a healthy level. So we went up to 14.5, and we were criticized for that. But we did not sacrifice anything. It was just that we realized more than we spent the year before, and we saved it. And it's a good thing we did, because with the pandemic, as you have seen, this administration went through $9 million of our surplus in less than 4 years. What would we have done if we didn't have that surplus to rely on? The roads, yes, a lot of roads, and that's wonderful, were paved, and through your own admission, and you're very proud of it, most of it was not paid for with taxpayer dollars. And what did not come out of surplus, it was out of operating. So What is the magic number for surplus? I'm not quite sure, but I was there when we were suffering, and I know it was important to build up, and we never sacrificed. It's not like we hoarded or sacrificed. We ran the town the way people expected Westfield to be run. I would improve in things like maybe spending more money in our budget for our crossing guards. I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but that's something where I think an investment needs to be made. If we can't attract people to protect our children, then maybe we have to raise the salaries. Those are the kind of investments in the town. Let's put money right now into our fields. As your next mayor, if I'm so privileged to become that, I will invest right away there's no more time for studies. We need the field so our children can play on them. Those are the types of things that we need a good solid surplus for.
2 minutes.
Well, I think I commented on the surplus previously. I think it's a $14 million on a $45 million budget is completely an overtax on our residents, and we need to put it for work for you, and we did. And I have to say, I just think in general there's this disconnect between words and deeds with Joann, and she has a 16-year history on the council to show that she had an opportunity to put things in action. So talking about doing all these things now just begs the question, well, why didn't it happen previously if it was so doable? And I just, saying you support fiscal responsibility isn't the same as proactive, responsible fiscal oversight. Saying that you support our downtown businesses while enabling excessive parking enforcement isn't the same as championing pro-business policies. Saying that you support the police isn't the same as providing them with full funding and resources and empowering them to reduce crime. Being tolerant isn't the same as embracing and modeling inclusivity. Saying you support a better commute for our residents isn't the same as fighting for one. Saying you support the historic preservation of our town isn't the same as proactively protecting our historic treasures. Saying you support the environment isn't the same as being an environmental leader. Saying that you support women is not the same as being a champion for them. Saying you support new fields isn't the same as leading the charge to bring them to fruition, especially with 14 years to bring something done with an overwhelming majority on the council. And saying you support keeping Brightwood as a nature preserve after spending 14 years allowing it to be destroyed by neglect isn't the same as being a champion for its restoration. And I think there's just this point about trying to say what will be done when there were 16 years on the council to do it. And I think it just begs the question about leadership and a difference between words and deeds. And I think the surplus is an example of that, is once again talking about $14 million in surplus, but yet it's an overtax, and I'm very, very proud of what we did with that, putting to work on behalf of taxpayers, giving it back to taxpayers where it belongs, and ensuring our town is in incredible fiscal shape.
The next question goes to you, Mayor Brindle. What would you like to see Hudson Bay Company do with the Lord & Taylor property, and how will you influence its outcome?
I think that's a great question, and it's one of the things that I'm most proud of. Shortly after I was elected, one of the first calls I made was to Lord & Taylor and then eventually to Hudson's Bay. Within 8 months of office, I was in the office of the chairman of the Hudson's Bay Corporation, Richard Baker. And this was while Lord & Taylor was still operating, but I don't think you needed to be, a genius to realize that the fate of that store was probably in jeopardy in light of what was happening in national retail chains all over the country. And he asked me the very same question. And I said, well, funny, because we're in the middle of or beginning a master plan for the community. And it's going to be very public input driven. And I think we can get the results from that, and the community is going to tell you what we want on that property. And what I think the more interesting question about that Lord & Taylor is not what's happening on the Lord & Taylor property, but what's happening on the north and south side of the train station. And I know Joann mentioned this no bid kind of thing, but I think there's a misunderstanding of what the redevelopment designation did. There's no bid, there's no money that we're offering them exclusively. They have a temporary designation. They've got a certain period of time to show us what they can do. And we can reject it or not. But I can tell you what could happen, and was on the verge of happening, is that turning Lord & Taylor into a Walmart. And you know what? They could do that tomorrow, and there isn't anything we could do about it. So rather than us sit back and wait to see what's going to happen, I said I'd rather have a seat at the table and help drive the outcome on behalf of the community. And by actually designating them for the north and south side of the train station, it gives them an opportunity to look at the town holistically. Because I'll be honest with you, I was really worried in my initial conversations that what they were going to do on that property was going to be so incredible that it was actually going to move the gravity of our downtown up to the Lord & Taylor site. And that's not good, and I told him that. So instead, we designated them for the north and south side of the train station as well, so they can take a very holistic view, and they're less inclined to feel like they have to maximize their return on the Lord and Taylor property, and they can look at how they can benefit the town overall. They recognize there's no sense in them investing hundreds of millions of dollars in the Lord and Taylor property if the entire town isn't set up to be successful. And that's why we're doing this. And so there's criticism about Streetworks and designating them, but why wouldn't you partner with your largest property owner and taxpayer, and who happens to be a nationally renowned developer and planner? Why wouldn't you do that? That's crazy. So yes, the resources that they're bringing in terms of planning are something we would never do on our own. And there's some fly-by-night developer wouldn't do on their own. These guys are vested in for the long term. They want to know, and I'm not naive. They want to know that whatever they invest in the Lord and Taylor property is going to be, they're going to get a return on that, because the entire town is set up to be successful. So what would I like to see? You know, that's ultimately going to be dependent, I think, on what happens everywhere. But I got to say, this scary notion, I think, that people are saying that there's going to be thousands of apartments is wrong. I can tell you, all my conversations with them, they have no interest in that. And so what they are interested in, making sure that they can help us with infrastructure, that they can create a state-of-the-art 21st century post-COVID community. Lots of green spaces, lots of we need office space. We do, because we need people working in our downtown. That's who supports lunch every day. We used to have a company downtown, 200 employees eating every day. And you know why they left? Because they didn't have parking. And that's what we need, and I think there's no better partner than Streetworks Development in Hudson's Bay to actually help us bring that to fruition. And honestly, we'd be crazy and naive not to consider what they bring to the table. And then, by the way, if you want to know what they're going to do, take a look at the master plan. That is their instruction manual, and that's what they're using to guide whatever they're going to be presenting to us in the foreseeable future. And I think we're incredibly fortunate to have that partnership in town.
2 minutes.
Thank you. Streetworks is a for-profit corporation who is no doubt looking to make their most return on its investment. Streetworks was awarded a no-bid deal for 3 parcels of town land. They have the right to develop the north, the south side train station parking lots. Let me say that again. The north side train station parking lot, the south side train station parking lot, and the parking lots in front of the post office. We do not know what the mayor and Streetworks is planning, despite all of the transparency we hear about. Is it in the best interest of Westfield? From what I've heard and seen, it seems like a mixed-use retail and residential huge vision that will transform Westfield. Is this the best use of the property? 3 prime municipal parcels of land in the center of our downtown? And with their own property, this is a majority of our downtown. This is an opportunity to be creative. I would love to explore a sports complex, a performing arts center, a hotel. Just 2 nights ago, a woman I spoke with said, how about something interactive like Chelsea Market? I think that's a great idea. If I were your mayor and if I had a seat at that table, I'd be advocating for you, not a developer. I don't think giving them, designating those areas as in need of redevelopment with all of the benefits that are attached to that is in the best interest of Westfield. This is not the type of arrangement, especially in light of the fact that all of these properties, all of them have been designated. I hope everyone here understands the full impact of what I just said. 5 parcels of land, 1 developer, a no-bid contract for 3 municipal lots, and a 30-year tax abatement for the developer all adds up to one great deal for Streetworks and a new and fundamentally different Westfield with a greater share of the tax burden falling on you and me.
Are Westfield Police, Fire, and DPW both fully staffed and fully equipped in your opinion?
So, it's for me, I assume?
That's for you.
Providing a safe town is one of the most important jobs for a mayor and her council. You have to make sure that staffing levels, fire and police, are adequate. You have to ensure that drivers and pedestrians are safety. You have to care for the youngest of our residents and the oldest. When I was on council, I worked with our fire and police to expand their ranks and modernize their equipment. In fact, despite what's been said, there was an increase in the number of police officers in 3 consecutive years, 2014, 2015, and 2016. We purchased 2 new fire trucks to replace an aging fleet and met state standards, and we hired additional firefighters in 2015 and 2016. To assist seniors to get around town safely, I helped establish a senior transport. They helped seniors get around town to doctors and other safe trips. To ensure the safety of our students, I worked with the Board of Ed to improve parking around the Westfield High School. 82 new off-street spaces and reduce congestion around the school, that was all implemented. We imposed parking restrictions around in front of Keller to improve pedestrian safety, which just leads me back to that Edison project. I don't know how anybody is going to be able to traverse around that area with the impact of the traffic. I voted against, and most recently, I voted against putting the safety of our school children in the hands of a company located in California, All City Services Management. That contract initially was over $600,000, $609,496. It has failed dreadfully in providing the services they were supposed to perform. The contract was just renewed a few weeks ago for another $598 some odd $1,000. They can't do what they were hired to do, which is to provide coverage for the post where the crossing guards are supposed to be. When I was on the council, we had 51 crossing guards, more than any other of the surrounding towns in this area. We were a walkable town. I helped institute the walking school bus, walk your child to school day. Now we're down to, I think it's 42, and the police are still filling the spots. That's why we hired this firm. And we have people, the crossing guards are people that we know in our neighborhood. We become friendly with them. That has all changed. Now it's a company that's outsourced from California, and they're not able to produce and protect our children. When I was on the council, it was a hard job. I would have to sit with the town administrator and try to figure out what posts are going to be covered. Now, they're paying someone to do it, over $600,000 or $600,000, and it's still failing at that. I would say this. I will go and talk to Sergeant Police Chief Badaloro and Fire Chief Tiller. One of the first things I would do if I become mayor. Sit with them, take the pulse, see if they feel that they have enough staffing. I wouldn't know if there's enough staffing. Based on what I hear, I think we probably could use a few more police officers. We've always hovered around 59 to 61. Maybe the needs have changed. Maybe because of the culture of the town, we have more crime. Maybe we need to increase that. I know we need to increase and improve our fire department. We've been talking about a new firehouse. I don't see any action on that. 4 years we've been taking holistic views on things, and nothing has happened. I ask you, ask yourself, are we in a better place than we were 4 years ago regarding all the promises that were made? And people refer to me as it's Joann's administration. Let me make it clear. I was one of 9 people. I was a town council representative for Ward 2, and I made sure I represented my council, my people in my ward. I didn't set the tone. I didn't make the decisions. I didn't set the priorities. That's what a mayor does. To say it's Joann's administration is just foolish.
2 minutes?
Well, I will just address that because I know you talk about a lot of the things that you initiated when you were on the council, so I either it's one or the other, and you were my Ward 2 council person. I live in your ward, obviously. So, the solution to solving some of these issues is not always people. And I think it's easy to go back to, we just need more staff. Listen, I talk to Chief Badalora pretty often, and I always ask him, what resources do you need? And we have that question all the time in the finance, and I can promise you, I said, if you need more resources, we got it. But there's other things. For example, we introduced C-Click-Fix, which is a way to automate service calls for the DPW, which has been great. We bought them new equipment, so they've been able to do improving plowing and patching, which I mentioned before. They planted 35% more trees. We're now a tree city designation because of that. Bulk pickup they did for the first time, which for after Ida, which was great. So speed boxes, we're implementing speed boxes. The thing about speed boxes, it's not only to actually reduce it to show you how to get you to slow down, but they actually turn them off to track how fast people are going and when, so they know when to target their traffic enforcement during the very specific hours of the day. And regarding a new firehouse, it's kind of funny you bring that up because it's absolutely related to streetworks. We've been having lots of conversations about the firehouse. Where do you think our current beautiful firehouse doesn't meet the needs of a modern firehouse? And Joann knows that because she was part of an agreement to do a study on that a while ago. Where would a great location be for a firehouse? On the Lord and Taylor property. And that's exactly what's being considered. So I would have to say one great thing. And then regarding crossing guards, yes, At the request of the police department, who didn't feel they were adequately prepared to handle all the HR and recruiting issues for crossing guards, we outsourced to ACMS. But that didn't mean your crossing guards changed. There's still Bob at Washington and Jessica at Franklin and George at Wilson. They're still there. And yes, is there a crossing guard shortage nationally? Absolutely. And I can tell you, our police department is pretty happy that they're not the ones that have to fill it out, because they're too busy trying to keep us safe.
Thank you. This is our last question for the evening. Many years ago, before either of you were on the governing body, council committee meetings were open to the public, and the governing body met every other week with conference sessions and business meetings a week apart.
I did that.
Does the current model of holding back-to-back conference and public sessions offer enough transparency and give residents enough opportunity to engage with their elected officials on important issues?
You know what, we're all open, I have to say, because I've made transparency and communication a hallmark of my administration. And as again, we're live streaming here tonight. I think, we send out a Friday mayor's update to everybody. I think it goes over 4,000 people, which was critical during COVID. And I think that we've provided many incredible opportunities for people to engage with the public. It's interesting, though, when you get in, you understand how the sausage is made. And I know a lot of people come up and think, oh, well, the council always agrees. And I have to say, as I mentioned earlier, the first 2 years of the council were bipartisan, like truly split council. There was 5 Democrats and 4 Republicans, and there is nothing that we've done over the last 4 years that's red or blue, and it shouldn't be. Filling your potholes, everything we talked about tonight is not party related. And so my point being is it was split 2 years ago, and you know what? We actually voted, we passed a lot of legislation that way. We did, except there was one person that voted no a lot, and it was Joann. And I couldn't help but think it's because she was chair of the Westfield Republican Committee. And I mean, voted against a 0% municipal tax rate. Who does that? And so there was a lot of things. And so regarding communication and engagement, I wasn't here back then. I heard that that's how it was. And for whatever reason, I'm a full-time mayor. I'm here all the time. And that's what I tell people. I meet with people in my office all the time. I don't have designated office hours because I'm here all the time. And so there's no shortage of hours on my end to devote to really creating engagement with the community and supporting the community. So I guess, after the results of this election, and it's a conversation that we'll take up with the council to see how these meetings and so forth should go forward. And I always tell the community, if there are more ways that we should be engaging with you, then then talk about it, because we find a lot of people aren't really meeting centric these days, and they seem to appreciate a lot of the more emails and automation. But if we have a council and we feel like the community wants more engagement, we're happy to entertain those things, because I think that we've done a pretty good job of making sure communities engage. I mean, 600 volunteer applications, boards and commissions that were never published before. Think about that for a minute. When I was elected, I couldn't even tell who was on the planning board. I had to go, to your credit, to the Westfield, to the leader, Westfield Today issue, and identify, thank you, sorry about that, and figure out who was on the boards and commissions. That's crazy, right? And it's not good governance. And so one of the things we did is we made sure everything that we do is out there, it's open. We engage through all kinds of ways, where you are. Emails, social media, everything you got, we're there for you. And if we think that we need to create more meetings because that's going to increase public engagement, and if there was definitive solutions that we would. But I'll tell you one thing, like, for example, Linda Hapgood did. She started kind of in January. Before we do the budget, Linda invited the public in to give a recap of how we did the year before in the budget. I come from the private sector. That's what you do. How do you do budget versus actual? That had never been done before. So those are the types of things that we're doing to make sure that we're getting your input. Because you know why? We work for you. We do. We're all volunteers, all of us. And so whatever we can do, we're only as good as the information we get. I went to a meeting not too long ago, and I heard someone say, closed mouths don't get fed. And it's really important that we hear from you, because that's what we're here to do, is deliver for you.
2 minutes.
Thank you. So the answer to your question is no, I don't think it's enough. There's absolutely not enough discussion amongst the council people and opportunity for people to really know what's going on. I voted no because that was a gimmick about the zero tax increase. And so to paint that as anything other than that is silly. I vow to be never to be paid as your mayor. I don't know what a full-time mayor means. This town is run by professionals. The town council and the mayor set the policy, and that's the proper role of the governor, of the mayor, and of the town council. And you have to work with people, and you have to make sure that you communicate. It's essential to good governance, as Mayor Brindle said. Good governance requires public trust. To have public trust, you need to be transparent. There has been very little transparency, despite all the technological advancements that we hear about. And quite frankly, there are a lot of people in this community who just don't feel connected because perception, as I was told one of the very first meetings I had with you, perception is reality. And I've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people that don't feel welcome to participate in this government. That's just the fact. That's how they feel. As far as dropping plans like Edison, Gumpert, Brightwood Park, where was the transparency? Where was the opportunity for the council members to even discuss it? To get a proposal for $18.2 million project at 2:55 p.m. on the day you're going to vote? That's not transparency. That's not communication between the council members and with the public. I would change that. I would absolutely revisit having meetings more than once a week. You need to have time to have discussion. I want the council people to really represent their ward members, and that requires effort and time. You shouldn't be doing it behind closed doors and presenting people with a final product at the end of the day. And frankly, I think I would, I'll stop talking.
But it's okay, because you get the first closing statement.
Thank you. Okay.
4 minutes.
Okay, let me find it. Okay. Well, I'm so thankful this is over. Thank you again, Lauren, for hosting this debate. Thank you, Mayor Brindle. Thank you to my family and my husband, Kevin. Thank you to my team of friends who have helped me through this process. And most of all, thank you to all of the residents, whether you like hearing what I have to say or not. Thank you for listening, both here and at home, and learning a little bit about me tonight. My vision for Westfield is clear. It is a Westfield with a bright future, a thriving downtown, safe neighborhoods, new athletic fields, nature preserves, a continued balance of small town charm, and smart growth. I believe in limited government, safe streets, fiscal responsibility, and taking care of the issues that affect the quality of your life. This is public service. It's not politics. It is a vision with an eye to the future and a respect for the past. We are all attracted to Westfield and moved here for the same reasons, whether it was 30 years ago like Kevin and myself, or whether it is today like the many young families I've spoken to over and over again. One thing remains constant: the desire to live and raise a family in a truly unique and special place that is Westfield. While it is true we can improve on many fronts, from our ailing downtown to the lack of athletic fields, to the overspending, to the sweetheart deals that the developers have gotten, I firmly believe with the right leadership, we will rebound. I served on the town council when we suffered through a severe financial crisis, only to come back stronger than ever, and I'll do that again. I know how difficult this job can be at times, and I thank Mayor Brindle for her dedication and her service. It is clear she firmly believes in her vision. I have a very different vision, and that vision is shaped by you, the resident. It's your needs, your concerns, your issues that I will work extremely hard to realize. I will work tirelessly to ensure that Westfield matures into a town balanced with new growth while meeting the changing needs of our residents. I will protect Westfield from transforming into an overcrowded, overdeveloped, and overburdened, unduly burdened town. And while working to achieve a thriving, safer town, the vision so many of you shared with me, I will do it with an unwavering respect for transparency and the dedication to listening to all of the residents of Westfield. I am committed to a diversity of ideas and welcome all of us to participate in local government. I know how it feels to be bullied and harassed simply because I don't share the same point of view. And there'll be zero tolerance for such behavior. That is not the Westfield I raised my family in, and it's not the Westfield you should have to raise yours in. Tolerance, acceptance, and acting as neighbors is my vision. Let's unlabel each other, and let's keep it local. As I have said over and over, my message has been since the beginning of this journey, and as I will continue to say because it's so crucial, this is a local election. It's about public service, not politics. It's about what's doing right and in the best interest of Westfield. It's about local issues. It certainly should not be about voting for a column on a ballot. Quite frankly, that's insulting. I ask you to vote for Joann Neylan, the person, the resident, the neighbor, the friend who you run into at the grocery store in downtown. I thank you for listening. Please consider all of the many ideas I have written and spoken about, and I humbly ask for your vote on November 2nd.
Now I'm going to have to let them clap for you, too.
Thank you, Lauren, for hosting tonight. Thank you, Joann, for participating, and of course, for your service to the town. While we disagree about a lot of things, I think we do have to remember we are all friends and neighbors, and it can be forgotten quite frequently, but I have not forgotten, and I truly am grateful, Joann, for you being here. And I also appreciate how hard this is. I really do. So I just also want to thank my family, including my first dude, Kip, and my three amazingly patient kids, Grace, Nora, and Nick, who are a big reason why I'm here. Tonight you've heard two very different visions for our future. One that preys on your fears and describes a town in decline, and the one I've been working towards, which builds on our hope and sees exciting potential. My administration remains committed to protecting what makes Westfield the special place that attracted so many of us to move here. The beautiful neighborhoods and historic homes, great schools, our attractive downtown, and most importantly, the people who live here. But the world doesn't stand still, and neither can we, which is why we need to keep working together to finish what we started. With respect to our downtown, for 3 years, we've been doing the heavy lifting. You've all participated in a master plan process. We've been laying the planning groundwork for exciting new possibilities. Today, we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and we need to keep working together to get it right. We're on the cusp of having a downtown that delivers steady foot traffic to our stores by providing live, work, and play options that will support them for the long term. Our iconic Northside train station is about to become a new bar and restaurant, and will anchor the transformation of that parking lot into Westfield's version of Bryant Park. The popular changes we've made on Quimby Street are poised to be made permanent, enabling a beautiful pedestrian plaza that rivals what you see in the best walkable towns in the U.S., or in Spain, as Joann referenced. We're committed to creating a bike and pedestrian-friendly downtown, bustling with more people than cars, enabling new businesses to open and thrive organically. We did not come this far to only come this far. We cannot afford to reverse course and send the wrong message that Westfield is closed for business. Now is the time for our community to come together to send a very different message. Westfield is ready to lead once again. As an elected official, I've learned that voting no is easy, but having the courage to get to yes is hard. I've demonstrated, I'm not short on courage, especially when it comes to the long-term best interests of our community. We've come too far for the past 4 years to retreat to the days of managing the town's resources as if our best days are behind us. I believe our best days lie ahead, rooted in the same spirit of volunteerism and compassion we've demonstrated over the past 2 difficult years. Whether it was sewing gowns for senior centers, launching the We Love Local campaign to support our business owners, or delivering food to the homebound, calling lonely seniors, cleaning our neighbors' flooded basements, painting murals, butterflies, and rainbow crosswalks. This is who we are in Westfield. And that's my proudest first-term accomplishment, harnessing that spirit and instilling a culture of inclusivity where many residents have felt seen and heard for the first time. I'll never forget seeing the grateful tears of parents at our first Pride flag raising, or the gratitude of the MLK Association when introducing the African American Historical Walking Tour, acknowledging their contributions to Westfield's 300-year history for the first time. And most recently, the pride of Charles Morrison's extended family when we dedicated a plaque at Memorial Park, finally acknowledging his contributions to the creation of that treasured complex. Thanks to the residents of this amazing town for allowing me to witness firsthand the generosity of spirit that embodies this community. It has indeed been my privilege to serve you. Lastly, I'm only as good as the people around me. That's why I'm asking for your vote on November 2nd, and also my Westfield Together team, whose collective contributions are greater than the sum of our individual parts. I look forward to serving you for another 4 years. Thank you.
On behalf of the Westfield leader, I'm not finished. On behalf of the Westfield leader, I'd like to thank the residents for their input for the questions for both forums, and TV36 for their assistance with broadcasting and live streaming tonight's event, along with both of the candidates for their time and participation. Polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Tuesday, November 2nd. For more information on mail-in ballots and early voting options, contact the Union County Clerk's office at unioncountyvotes.com. Thank you all and good night.